Hello, people from around the world. Welcome to today's episode of World Context. In today's video, we will be discussing European issues with migration, why there is pushback, and how we can voice our opinions without hatred. Without further ado, let's get started. You have all seen the Save Europe videos. You wouldn't be here otherwise. But just in case, let's go over them. Save Europe is an online movement that tries to push back against liberal ideas of immigration, cultural mixing, and globalization. On the surface level, there is nothing wrong with it. However, when you see how these ideas are being pushed out, you are often met with racism, intolerance, or historical bias. So what does this hatred look like? In most cases, it is very heavily dominated by anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or just hatred for non-Europeans in general. They have racist caricatures of greedy Jewish people, violent Muslims, or uneducated Africans. This propaganda often ignores historical context and cherry-picks data. But there has to be some foundation behind this hatred. No human will go out of their way to hate others for no reason. Let's begin with the biggest issues for these far-right ideas. This is cultural mixing. Let's face it, there's no denying that Europe gets millions of immigrants yearly. This wouldn't be an issue for the far right, however, if they were increasing faster than the migrants. According to the European Union, the birth rate of Europeans is 1.3, which is far below the replacement rate of 2.1. This means that European nations lose many people per year. You might be wondering why Europe hasn't lost a large portion of its population yet, and the answer to that is migrants. Massive influxes of migrants offset the population loss, and on average, they have more children. This can make people who are exposed to this news feel a sense of replacement and cultural death. So why do Europeans keep letting in more migrants? The answer is rooted in complex economics, but to give you the short answer, it is because Europe needs to keep making enough money. If the population shrinks, so does the workforce. And if the workforce shrinks, so does the money in the country. This could lead to a collapse in social security, increased taxes, and more. Europe relies on these migrants, and banning immigrants from entering is not sustainable. The second issue that has been voiced is issues of safety. There are many statistics you could find that state on average, migrants are more likely to commit violent crimes. Clearly, this means that migrants are dangerous, they are third world, and they must be deported at once, right? Wrong. Migrants as a whole are not more likely to commit violent crimes because they aren't white Christians, but because they are poor. Violent crimes always scale with levels of wealth, simply because of worse standards of living, higher sense of discomfort, and many more reasons. It is human nature to feel violent when you feel threatened due to uncertainty about meeting your basic needs such as food or shelter. If any statistics talk about race, just look at the average wealth of the specific race in that area. A poor Christian European is just as likely to commit his crime as a poor Muslim Somali. This does not mean that poor people are violent and worthless. On the contrary, if you put those poor people in a stable environment, they would be a lot less violent on average, and they'd be a lot less depressed on average, and they would be a lot more healthy on average. Sadly, because of the systems of living in the world, there will always be a lower class, so an upper class can exist. If migrants come here for a better life, then why aren't they rich yet? If they really wanted to exist with us Europeans, they would have made money already instead of leeching off of our tax money and committing crimes. This is a very common misconception, but sadly, it is not that easy. Migrants will often have different cultural values, different languages, or other factors that hinder their ability to climb the social ladder. Being unable to fluently speak the language is already a major setback. It is not easy to learn French as an Arab or English as an Indian. The language systems are simply too different. Furthermore, migrants do not have any experience with the financial systems in Europe. They begin with no credit and no idea of how the banks work. This all takes time to learn, and when you have mouths to feed, it is not exactly on your list of priorities. You will often have to wait for their children to be familiar with the culture, customs, language, and systems. And once that happens, they almost fully integrate into society. The final point the Save Europe movement makes is about migrating in the first place. If these people love their nation so much and talk so much trash about ours, why don't they just stay where they came from? I hear you. It seems almost contradictory. But the issue here comes from something that ended very recently and in other places is still ongoing. European exploitation. It seems like the cow that leftists milk to defend migration, doesn't it? I'm afraid that is a very good argument, though. Europeans have done horrible atrocities in other nations for far longer than most other exploitative empires in the past had done. Whether it be genocides in the Congo, famines in India, or betrayal in the Middle East, these scars are still left across nations today. In some cases, nations still continue with the exploitation in these regions, such as France with West Africa or Britain and Germany with Israel. These cause very complex issues, but to simplify it, it's either going to cause corruption or war. This will always cause refugees and migrants. It is true, we cannot blame the modern-day Europeans for most of this. However, taking in these migrants is not a punishment. It is quite the opposite, being beneficial. As previously discussed, Europe is in need of people, and the migrants are in need of a safe home. Together, these two can become almost symbiotic and cover each other's needs. It is okay to still be against migration, if it is your opinion. However, it is important to understand why it happens and to not resort to racism. Oftentimes, racism stems from underlying issues either in the person or the nation. Stay loving. Peace always wins.